Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to join our Contribulet webinar. This is our very first webinar. My name is Kei, and I'm the founder of Contribulet. Contribulet is a social enterprise. We target to communicate local merchants and then the local costs. So since this is our first webinar ever, let me share my impotence of creating Contribulet with you. I'm myself a little bit about myself. I have a school-age girl with me, and over the last several years, I've been helping local community and schools on their fundraising. I was lucky that I would be able to work with all these volunteers with a lot of passions. They volunteer their time and efforts to make our community better. And I'm also fortunate during the fundraising process. I got lucky to work with all these good business owners. They have great heart. They're willing to give back to our community, and they care about our schools. However, there's a missing link in between that I find out. I was lucky. I was able to reach out to the business owner relatively easy because a lot of our parents, some of my other volunteers, they are business owners themselves. But I'm sure a lot of you have the experience of trying to reach out to the local business, soliciting door to door, like in the plaza, and trying to find that one business owner and then that's willing to work with your school projects, that's willing to donate and contribute to your school projects. That's not easy. That's a lot of work for you, and I truly admire the effort. But it shouldn't be that hard. I think with all these business owners that's willing to contribute to our community, and with all these volunteers that have passion and wanting to help out our kids, we should be able to bridge them and bring the demand and supply together. So that's exactly the reason why I found Contribulet. I wanted to have a free platform for merchant and fundraiser to register themselves, and we'll be able to reward this community-friendly business by bringing them through traffic, by helping them do better in our community, and also hand this resource to all the schools, PTA members, and maybe a Little League baseball team, like churches, so they don't do the repetitive work over and over and then suffering through all the same process themselves. So if you share our vision of creating a better community by contribute to the good cause, no matter if you are a business owner or you are local fundraisers, welcome to join us and register yourself on Contribulet. So about today's webinar, we're gonna have a teacher from Sunnyvale Middle School. His name is Brian Brown. He's the 7th grade teacher. It shows 6th grade. I guess he just got promoted, but he's the 7th grade teacher now. And he's also the leadership. He teaches leadership students for 7th and 8th grade. And he's also the activity director in Sunnyvale Middle School. Sunnyvale Middle School recently run a pretty successful fundraising event with Contribulet. And I invite him here to speak in this webinar so he can share his experience with us, because I think he has some cool idea how to work with students, how to organize them, and it turned out they got pretty good result. They raised over 2,300. So let's welcome Mr. Brown.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me here today. My name is Brian Brown, and as Kyle mentioned, I teach at Sunnyvale Middle School. Currently I'm teaching 7th grade English. I also teach the 7th and 8th grade leadership class. I've been a teacher for 13 years. I taught 6th grade for a number of years, now teaching 7th grade. One of my bigger jobs as the student activities director and the leadership teacher at Sunnyvale Middle School is working with organizations within the community I've worked with a number of organizations and really enjoyed that experience. Gives me an opportunity to branch out a little bit, not just working with kids, but working with parent groups and other members of the community. We're just getting... I can just get started here. There we go. Fantastic. So that's a little bit about me. Talking about the school. So Sunnyvale Middle School, diverse demographics. We have about 1,200, just over 1,200 students at the school. Very socioeconomically diverse as well. So the school has had mixed success with fundraisers. We've done some in the past. This is the first year that we've obviously worked with Contribulet, and as Kyle mentioned, it was a pretty successful endeavor. So some stats for you regarding this latest fundraiser that we did. We had roughly 16 participating restaurants, just over $2,300 earned for the school, which was fantastic. 503 total users. That's about 42% of our student population. Some of those users were parents and community members, but the vast majority of them were students. Of those, we had 113 active users, and I think we defined active users as users who not only downloaded the app, but actively participated in the fundraiser by earning points for their team. And we'll talk more about the teams a little bit later, but checking in, earning points for their team. So those were our active users. And among those active users, we generated about $20.79 or 79 cents on average per active user. So some things about the totals. So total users, about 42% of our students. That's a nice high number. When you compare that to their fundraisers, that's I would say the act of downloading the app, and that's how we define the number of total users. Very similar to for example, fundraisers in the past have been like magazine sales. We've done a magazine sale. So every kid would go to the assembly and they'd listen to the presentation, and then they would receive their packet for their magazine sales. At that point, are they participants? It's hard to say. A lot of those packets ended up in the trash, or they ended up in backpacks. But with Contribulet, kids are all very attached to their phones, and having the app on their phone, I think was a nice way to make sure that they were able to use the program and participate in the fundraiser. So a little bit different in that respect. We had a great experience with not only Contribulet, but with some of the local businesses. So I wanted to share with you a little bit of what the breakdown looked like, and talk with you a little bit about some of the restaurants and which ones were particularly successful. So as you can see, Chipotle was our biggest hit. Excuse me. So Chipotle was fantastic for us. Generated about just over $600 in sales, which represented about 26% of our total. So as you're looking, when you're thinking about local businesses, Chipotle is fantastic because they donated, if I remember, it was about, I can't remember the total percent, but it was much higher of the total percent of sales than some of the other restaurants that participated. So that was one of the things that we found out reflecting on the fundraiser, is the importance of which restaurants you're targeting. Pizza My Heart, Jamba Juice, and The Habit kind of rounded out those other top sellers. Contribulet played a large part in soliciting the local restaurants, and that was something that was a relief, because one of the more difficult parts of doing a restaurant night, for example, which is a typical way of generating revenue, fundraising revenue, that requires somebody to go out and liaison with the restaurant management and connect with them, which is time consuming. And so having help with that was a benefit for sure. One of the other things that we found with these local businesses is it was important to pick a good night to do it. There were some nights we were very successful during the week, when we knew that everybody was in town. Local families from the school were in town. When school is actually in session, we had done something. A couple of the fundraisers over a break. We have a winter break in February, and that was a little bit less successful, just because folks were out of town and not as connected with what was going on at the school. The way that we came up with this list of restaurants is we sent a survey out to all of the students and asked them, what are the local restaurants that you are most, you frequent most often? Where are you excited to go? Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? And by asking the students for that feedback, we were able to then target restaurants that we knew were popular with the kids. So this is what it looked like, and I'm gonna hope to show you this video. We're gonna see that this works here.
Contribulet app for our school fundraiser. Basically how it works is that we earn points for buying different food items at different places, and a percentage of that money goes to our school.
So you go to the app, and then you click show gift card. You enter the amount of money you want to use on the gift card, and then you click redeem.
So that's what it looked like when we got the kids out to the local businesses. It was a lot of fun to go out with them and be a part of that. So how did we get there? How did we get the kids motivated? How did we get them excited to participate? Students love competition. They're very competitive by nature. So what we did was we divided the students into teams that worked out to be about 90 kids per team. So what was important to me and what I thought would foster really good competition and fair competition amongst the teams was we got each team had each grade level in middle school, 6, 7, and 8 represented on the team. And that's easy enough to do by just looking at the schools, by the kids' homeroom or first period teachers. So I grabbed a roster from all the first period classes, and then just populated the different teams. Made sure a 6th grade class was in a particular team, a 7th grade class, and an 8th grade class. Worked out to about 90 students per team. Since this was during the Winter Olympics, which was big, in the news, people were following it, we decided to theme our competition after the Winter Olympics. We ended up calling it the Restaurant Olympics, and the kids had fun with that. We named each individual team after some of the competing countries in the Winter Olympics. And then we let them go at it. And the teams, the app itself would update very regularly how teams were doing and how they were scoring points. And, kids got into it. And something that's true for all fundraisers or anything like this, you do have some kids that really embrace it and really get excited, and then some kids that aren't really that into it. But I think when you're thinking about your fundraisers and you're thinking about how you're going to generate interest, using a competition type structure is important. It just works out. So the prizes for the teams that did really well, we had the top 3 teams were invited to participate in kind of an after-school celebration. That ended up being a really fun event for the kids. So we rented a bunch of bounce houses. Hopefully you can get an idea what that looks like there. That was an aerial shot from our event. Kids really enjoyed being a part of that event. And this is some of the kids on the ground there having a good time. Had a really good turnout for the event. Of course, there were some kids within these teams that really participated and were very, very active, and some that weren't as active. But the way that we set up the structures, we rewarded everybody that was on that particular team. And I think that's a good way to do it because it fosters teamwork and brings kids together, builds community. So I was happy with the way that worked out. And then the top team ended up, we gave them a free t-shirt as well. There's something about a free t-shirt, I don't know what it is. Kids love a free t-shirt, so you just tell them they get a free t-shirt and they want to do stuff. So that was fun, that worked out well. So a big part of any kind of fundraiser is communicating and publicizing. It was very important that we communicated what was going on. So we did that multiple ways. We communicated through PTSA. So a large group of your most active parents are PTSA members. So we worked with PTSA. Email blasts. So I coordinated with our school secretary, who was a community and parent liaison, and made sure that all of the newsletters, all of the email lists, we were repeatedly putting out information through those. Spartan TV, so that's our announcements, our morning announcements. So we have a new, it's like styled after like a news broadcast, so the kids are the anchors, and so lots of information out on Spartan TV, flyers on campus, reminders through the Contribulet app that people donated on their phones, and then my leadership team, my leadership students, going out and being those ambassadors and visiting classrooms and explaining how the program worked. Talking about the fundraising structure and the team structure, it was the leadership kids that were kind of captains of each team. So they went out and made sure that they were connecting and checking in with the individual classrooms that were represented on their team. And that was really important. When you're dealing with middle schoolers, they have to hear, I think this is probably true for everybody, they have to hear something multiple times. So we had to explain how to download the app through videos that were generated by the folks at Contribulet, student generated videos explaining how to download the app, explaining it in written instructions, explaining it in person, and explaining the structure of the fundraiser and how it was going to work and the prizes and everything in multiple different ways over and over again, because that's just how you have to get information across. So I think it's really important to not underestimate that area, and that really needs to be an area of focus in order to be to create a successful event. And then lastly, just working with Contribulet and giving you some feedback on that. So using the app, I've talked a lot about that. That was a very useful tool. It was really nice to have something connected to the way that our students are really connected to the world right now, and that's technology. That's their phone. It's so important to kids. Again, just that communication. So not only communicating how the event is supposed to go with the students, but also regular, frequent check-ins with the Contribulet folks. Multiple meetings, very responsive. We were able to meet. During the event, we met weekly. We were talking, text messaging and emailing constantly. So having that open communication was really, really helpful in creating a successful event. Pushing videos out, like I mentioned, some student-generated videos generated by Contribulet themselves, a good social media presence, and again, as I mentioned earlier, the working with the local businesses and not having to do that as a busy teacher myself, it would have been almost impossible. So having that team in place that could go out and work with the local restaurants was really important as well. So that's it for my presentation. I think we're going to take some questions now.
Yeah, so Brian, a question for you. If you were going to give advice to a school who want to do a fundraiser, what are the top 3 things you would tell them they need to do to be successful?
So you have to generate interest and you have to incentivize, because some kids are altruistic and some kids really want to do good for their school, but they want prizes. So you have to incentivize. You have to generate excitement, and you can do that. Like I mentioned, the competition is a great way to generate excitement, and clear and frequent communication. I think those are the top 3 things. Well, and you have to be organized too. And you also have to have a product that people are going to want to buy. We have done fundraisers in the past. We did a magazine fundraiser for years, and 10-15 years ago people were buying magazines, but people aren't buying magazines anymore, and so the product wasn't attractive. The nice thing about a fundraiser like this is everybody likes to eat, right? So I think having a product that people want to buy is important too.
And let me ask you, when you talk to your leadership students, what was their impression of using kind of a web-based platform for fundraising?
Amongst my leadership students, I think they were excited about it. I think that kids are so inclined to using technology. I think that they were happy to be able to be on their phones in class, and I think there was a fairly high level of interest.
Okay, so it seems like this approach worked pretty well at the middle school level. What about at the elementary school level, where kids are younger?
So in elementary school, the older elementary school kids, I think you might be surprised, they have, a lot of them have phones too. But I think at an elementary school, you would need to make sure that there was a high rate of parental involvement. So that's going to be, what's going to be key there, I think, is making sure you're connecting what's going on at school with what's going on at home, and making sure the parents are really informed. In an elementary school, you might, when you're doing your rollout or when you're looking at structuring your competition, you might think about involving the parents even more.
Okay. So we do have a question that came in for our Facebook page. Brian, could you tell us how you made the teams compete over the different restaurant events?
So the teams were divided based on the Winter Olympics theme. So there was Team USA and Team China and Team England, and so the way that we got them to compete is, first we explained like, hey, this is a points-based system. You're going to earn points for your team. So every time you go to a restaurant and check in, you earn points. And then giving them regular updates. So getting on our Spartan TV broadcast and giving them updates on how the different teams were doing. And again, just having that competition, letting them know, really promoting each individual event before, right? So, if we had if it was Chipotle night on February 16th, then at school on the 15th, we were telling them like, hey, it's Chipotle tomorrow, flyers up on campus, announcements on Spartan TV, so that's basically how we kept kids interested and kept the different teams competing with each other.
Okay, so teams could earn points by participating in these restaurant events. Were there other ways that teams could earn points?
So what did we do? So, the way they could earn points also if they shared on social media, right? I think they could earn each time somebody. Did they earn points for actually downloading the app and registering for the team? I think that was part of it as well. I can't remember, but it was mostly checking in at the events and sharing on social media. I think those were how teams earned points.
Any other questions? We're good?
All right.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
So before we end our webinar, we did want to let you know about an upcoming webinar. So please pencil in on your calendar, June 5th from 11 to 11:30, we're going to hold our second webinar on fundraising in the Bay Area. And I think we're very fortunate to have an expert panel of fundraisers to join us for this panel discussion. We have Anne-Marie Meacham, who is Executive Director for the Fremont Union High School Foundation. Bev Lenahan, who is a distinguished fundraising professional, and she's past president of the Silicon Valley chapter for the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And rounding out our panel is Josh Selo, who is Executive Director for West Valley Community Services, and he's also the President-elect for Silicon Valley chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. So it should be a very interesting discussions as we look at and talk about how fundraising is evolving in the Bay Area and what these individuals are doing to guide their organizations to really address some of the challenges that they're seeing today. So hope to see you there on June 5th, 11 to 11:30.